PEC360 stands for Patient Engagement Centers, and patient engagement centers are boutique call centers, if you will, for health systems. And the purpose of it is to use our underlying technology to identify patients who have what we call gaps in care, or patients who are due for visits. So our technology every night scans the data of a health system to identify these patients and then pushes it into a work queue for our call centers, who then reach out to these patients and schedule them for the visits. And so we schedule on average about 50,000 patients a year for every 100 physicians. The technology came from other industries, and we copied the best CRM technology platforms that we could find, primarily from the retail industries, and then we're fortunate enough to get a chief technology officer from Blackbaud to come on board with us, and which is also a CRM platform, which stands for Customer Relationship Management, and he built our platform for us 3 or 4 years ago.
SCRA and South Carolina Launch have been absolutely instrumental in our development from the get-go. The initial grant kind of kept us going and gave us the fuel to take it from just an idea into an actual marketable concept. And then, very importantly, Derek introduced me and Chris and brought us together so that he was the
time to retire.
Right, that's right. He was the catalyst that really kind of brought the team together, which also was very critical. And then we had the big check event, which provided the funds to actually develop the technology. It paid for Sean Sullivan, the Blackbaud guy Chris was talking about, to develop the technology. So that's been instrumental, and we truly would not be here today if it wasn't for SCRA and SC Launch. For us, South Carolina has been the ideal environment. We haven't had to go outside of South Carolina for any of our people. We now have over 40 FTEs here in Charleston and in Spartanburg. Everybody's come locally. We've found a great talent pools, well-trained talent pools, and it's as you know, South Carolina is so business friendly that from a headquarters standpoint, we don't ever anticipate leaving South Carolina. There'd just never be a reason to do that. We'll have employees in other states as we put patient engagement centers in North Carolina and Virginia and so forth. But South Carolina's just been the ideal environment.
I tell you, one of the common traits that we see among other successful startups is that you'll find a relationship like mine and Nick's, where you have someone who has an idea and is trying to bring it to market but doesn't have the experience and we like to say the gray hair to pull it all together and execute it. And the successful startups that we know and interact with all seem to have this common element, where it's a team, where you've got someone with the drive and the energy and the vision and an idea, but doesn't have the experience to execute it. And then when that individual gets paired up with someone like Nick, who's got the experience and has done this before, it makes a very powerful group and team, and allows the rest of the team to then gel, because it takes 10 people or more from a management standpoint to fill all the holes that you have to get one of these things off the ground. But it starts with a relationship like mine and Nick's, and it's been shocking to see how common that is throughout the entrepreneurial world. My background is in the automotive industry, primarily on the retail side, and this business model of what's called a business development center was hatched in automotive about 10 years ago. And essentially what happened is automotive is so competitive that the management of customers got pulled in-house and was supported with a customer relationship management platform, so that all sales and service communication with customers was done from a call center within a car dealership. So if you own a car that you bought from a new car dealership, you've been contacted about oil changes or sales or service. So that model changed the automotive industry dramatically over about a 10-year period, and so I participated in that. In early 2008, 2009, I was asked by some physician friends of mine to help them grow their business. And so I looked for that same technology in the healthcare space and realized it wasn't there. So we built a very simple CRM platform and put the data in there and saw a dramatic increase in patient visits and the ability to close gaps in care or get patients scheduled who had chronic diseases, preventive care issues they needed taken care of. And so we saw the power of proactive population management, which is what we call it. And from there, it just took off. But this business model is not new. It's in the automotive industry, it's in the financial industry. We were just very surprised to see it wasn't in healthcare, and the consumerization of healthcare has taken place over the last 4 or 5 years with the rollout of Obamacare, and it's just been an evolution, and fortunately for us, we were in the right place at the right time.
And when I first sat down with Chris, and of course I've been in the venture capital entrepreneurial business for decades, and usually I sit down with somebody like Chris and I go, and then 5 minutes later I'm trying to get out of the room, right? And but when I sat down and talked to Chris, boy, the more I learned, the more, and I have a little checklist in my head, like all venture guys do, right? And I just started going through those lists and checking everything off, and every one of them was spot on. And what I mean by that is that a lot of businesses have local potential, but they're never going to be billion-dollar business or either millions and millions of dollars. And I mean, just in my head, running the numbers, I went, gosh, this could be literally could be $1 billion business. And so that was the first check. And then the second check was so many businesses take so much resources to create and operate it that there are no margins. And this has, because it's software, has great margins. The third thing was competition. You know, and when Chris first mentioned it to me, boy, my competition red lights went off, and I went, oh man, this kind of software, anybody could do this, right? But as we got into it, the difference that everybody can't do is actually creating the call center. And software companies are not going to go out and hire entry-level people to sit in a room and make telephone calls, right? And that's what really separates us. And when we sit down and talk to these healthcare systems, they go, oh yeah, well those CRMs here, we're talking about 5 other people about CRMs. Well, how many people are you talking to about taking that CRM and creating a patient engagement center that's actually going to call your patient and convince them to come in and get it? Well, we've never heard of that before. And that's why we get such overwhelmingly positive response. And then, thanks to you guys, the final thing was putting a team together, and the team just fell into place. So, you know, every one of those critical elements just were right there and fell into place. So.